members of staff of the Ministry of National Mobilization, the media, a very pleasant good morning. I called this press conference this morning to bring the media up to date as to what is happening here in the Ministry of National Mobilization, Social Development, the Family, Gender, Persons with Disabilities and Youth. This morning I call this press conference at a glance. Here's what is happening within the ministry. I just give an overall backdrop as to what the ministry is all about. The Ministry of National Mobilization, Social Development, the Family, Gender, Persons with Disabilities and Youth recognizes the critical role of social development as a vehicle to promote growth, improve services and strengthen institutions within the state. The ministry is very cognizant of its role in national development with a goal to empower the poor and vulnerable such that they can eventually experience a better quality of life and make a bigger contribution to the national agenda. Social development, therefore, is a process of transforming institutions for greater inclusion, cohesion, and accountability. The ministry considers poverty reduction with all its attendant challenges as fundamental requirement for the reinforcement of peace and stability, achieving sustainable development and building social equity amongst the people. The ministry uses a holistic approach in addressing these social challenges confronting the nation with particular emphasis on the sustainable development goals, which speaks to 1, eradicating extreme poverty and hunger, 2, promoting gender equality and reducing inequalities. The ministry will also be guided by the 2013-2025 National Economic and Social Development Plan in achieving its goals and objectives. The vision of the ministry: through research, monitoring, and evaluation, develop and implement policies and programs that would support and create a framework where the disadvantaged and indigent can be supported. Our core values and functions. The ministry is committed to the following core functions: A, social protection service to the poor and vulnerable in partnership with stakeholders and civil society organizations. B, a child and youth development service that seeks to support rehabilitative, reintegrate and develop children and youth as they transition to adulthood. And C, a human and community development service that provides sustainable development programs which facilitate empowerment of communities and resilience building. What are some of the achievements within the ministry over the last couple of years? Under the area of child development, presently there are 190 children in state protective care because of abuse and neglect. According to the data collected by the Child Development Division, in 2019, the department received approximately 300 reports of children being abused or neglected. Approximately 34% of the reports were classified as victims of child neglect, 30% as victims of physical abuse, 23% as victims of sexual abuse, and 10% as victims of psychological abuse. Activities taken by the division. 1. The division has conducted some 20 awareness programs in 10 communities and in our schools with parents, teachers, children, healthcare practitioners, shelter managers, coaches, counselors, and religious institutions to heighten awareness of child abuse and neglect. The participants were sensitized in the following areas: 1. Child abuse protocol and reporting guidelines. 2. The Children Care and Adoption Act 2010. 3. Child abuse in emergencies. 4. Child abuse in sports. 5. The rights of the child. Secondly, the division, in collaboration with UNICEF, conducted a series of training workshops on the child abuse protocols and reporting guidelines and the Children Care and Adoption Act of 2010 to provide police officers, healthcare practitioners, and educators with the knowledge and skills to recognize, prevent, and respond to child abuse and neglect, thus enhancing the capacity in the execution of their duties. A total of 180 law enforcement officers included gazetted officers, non-commissioned officers, police constables, officers from CID Criminal Investigation Department, Outstation and Sexual Offences Unit, the DARE program officers, and other police officers who work directly with children attended a one-day training during the period the 5th to the 9th of August 2019. Additionally, 142 healthcare professionals, including medical doctors, hospital administrators, nurses, social workers, etc., received training during the period the 19th to the 23rd of August 2019. Another training workshop will take place in the month of October for 150 educators, including principals, counselors, and other senior officials. Thirdly, the division recognizes that parents play a vital role in their child's development. Parents are not only caretakers, but they are instrumental in the development of their children's social, emotional, cognitive, and physical well-being. As a result, the division has conducted parenting programs in 5 communities and schools. A total of 130 parents have benefited from this initiative. Fourthly, consultations and focus groups on the development of a national child justice policy framework in collaboration with USAID was held in January, February, and May. The purpose of this initiative is to strengthen national protection frameworks as it relates to children in conflict with the law, and to ensure a uniform, coordinated, and cooperative approach, proper intersectoral coordination, and cooperation with non-governmental and civil societies. This initiative targeted the following key stakeholders. 1. 25 young inmates aged 17 to 30 years. 2. Members of the NCRC committee. 3. 60 childcare practitioners from the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the Ministry of National Mobilization, the Ministry of Education, NGOs, and the Family Court. These consultations will aid in the development of programs for juveniles in conflict with the law. In the area of community development, the Community Development Division is finalizing plans for refurbishing of 14 community centers throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines at a budgeted cost of $428,000 EC dollars. These works will be done through a capital project listed under this ministry in the 2019 estimates of revenue and expenditure. Planned work on these centers range from minor repairs to structural retrofit. As you may be aware, in most communities where centers are located, the community center is sometimes the only multi-use public building available for hosting social, cultural, and/or educational activities. Emergency sheltering is one of the critical uses of community centers. Therefore, one of the main considerations for shortlisting a center for repairs is its location and whether there is an alternative sheltering in the area. Community action research and planning. Another critical area of focus for the Community Development Division in the medium term is building the capacity of its staff to conduct community action research. As such, one of the key program activities for the division for 2019 is to work with at least 5 communities to develop and implement area development plans to include profiles and priority plans. This is tied to one of the goals of the division, which is to establish a community information database. The data gathered will help us to better determine community priorities and undertake evidence-based intervention aimed at poverty reduction and community resilience building. The division is implemented a sub-project funded under the Japanese Caribbean Climate Change Partnership and the United Nations Development Programme. The goal of this project is to minimize the potential negative impacts of climate-related hazards on the most vulnerable households within 2 poor communities on mainland St. Vincent. The project activities are as follows. Construction of a footpath and drains at Butland Glass measuring 329 feet. Construction of footpath and drains at the Fair Hall measuring 450 feet. Construction of tank platforms and provision of 500 gallon water tank and installation of guttering and dung piles to 9 premises at Butland Glass. Construction of tank platforms and the provision of 500 gallon water tank and installation of guttering and dung piles to 3 premises in Fair Hall. The project activities will be completed in early October 2019 this year. Over the past 2 years, the CDB, through its community disaster risk reduction, has been assisting the ministry in this regard. Coincidentally, they will be sponsoring a 1-week community profiling and livelihood-based assessment training and field exercise for staff and stakeholders to commence Monday, September 30th. That's next Monday. The targeted communities will be Fancy, Owea, Sandiby, Overland, Big Level, Connery, South Rivers, Park Hill, Spring Village, and Rose Hall, Chateaubelair, and Fituse. We want those communities to cooperate with the data collectors and facilitators who will be on the ground gathering data during that week. This exercise is critical to informing the ministry's program going forward. It will also provide the opportunity for citizens to participate in a process that provides opportunities for them to frame the type of development they want to see take place in their own communities. I now turn to social protection. During the period of January to present, the Social Protection Division has engaged in a number of activities for the elderly throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Union Island, Calico, Black Point, and Georgetown. The elderly were given a round the island historic tour of Union Island. They visited places such as the Health Center, the Susgren newly constructed bridge, Union Island Secondary School, Big Sand, and the airport. The elderly sang and danced to folk songs, big drum dance, along with playing games such as bingo and ring games, Brown Girl in the Ring, and so on, games like those, etc. And some of them received prizes. And you know, with these activities, the elderly continue to ask for more. A press conference was done on International Day for the Family by yours truly, the Honorable Frederick Stevenson, while at the same time the department meshed the young generation along with the elderly to give a heartwarming presentation on the topic. Public awareness programs were also conducted at Union Island, Calico, Georgetown, Trumuka, Evesham, Gomey, and the Belmont Primary Schools. There are 58 families under the Client Empowerment Program. Clients are exposed to a wealth of knowledge and skills that will better equip them to become self-empowered. A social assistant enrichment workshop was conducted on the 14th of January this year at the Foreign Affairs Conference Room. To date, the department has 81 home helpers who cater to the needs of the vulnerable population in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There are approximately 270 individual beneficiaries of this service. This year, an additional 34 persons were trained and is scheduled to graduate on the 11th of October 2019. The same number of persons was trained in sign language. So as part of the home health program for this year, because we know some of our elderly, they're deaf, they're dumb, some of them are visually impaired. So we use the resources of the other agencies to help us in this regard, because you know that the home health program is one of the flagship programs of the ministry and the government. A lot of persons are asking for us to assist the elderly in this regard. In collaboration with the Voice of the Disabled, this is a group from in the Connery, Georgetown area. 25 home care providers were trained to take care of their loved ones, and they do that out of the goodness of their heart and their work within the ministry. What are some of the beneficiaries of this of the ministry and the types of assistance? And I will also give the numbers. In the year so far, in up to this period, September, in terms of medical assistance, 188 persons benefited through the ministry's medical assistance program. School fees, 270. Uniform assistance, 3,516. Exam fees, some 11 persons were assisted. In terms of utilities, electricity and water, 197 persons were assisted. Immediate assistance, where people just walk in and ask the ministry to support them in one way or the other. We had some 273. Funeral grants, 169 persons were assisted. In terms of fire victims, there are some 46 persons who came to the ministry asking for assistance with their homes due to the result of fires. Basic amenities, 708. Transportation, 525. Meal assistance at schools for the poor and the vulnerable, some 525. Sorry, that's transportation. 525 persons are assisted. In terms of meals, 542. Disability grant, 294. Medical grant, 48. Elderly, 176. And the national public assistance, there are 4,300 persons on the public assistance list. And this 4,300 persons include some children who would have lost their parents as a result of victims of domestic violence or being in prison. Under the cooperative development, for the past 3 years or so, the Cooperative and Community Development Division have been operating as a single merged unit. This merger has allowed for the division's financial and human resources to be more effectively allocated to address the socio-economic concerns of the nation's poor and vulnerable. For the fiscal year 2019, the division has proven quite successful in the achievement of key result indicators. As at the 15th of September, 6 new producer cooperatives with membership of approximately 142 farmers were officially registered. And if I may say, I believe some of these new cooperatives are some of the cooperatives who are involved in the medicinal cannabis industry. There are 12,475 students who are actively involved in the school's cooperative thrift program. 3 modernized greenhouses fully equipped with solar-driven pumps and water tanks were installed at the George Stevens, the Adelphi, and the Central Leeward secondary schools. This project is aimed at bolstering the agri-science program in the schools system and introduce students to climate change, smart technologies in agriculture. The Cooperative Division continues to advance the Ministry of National Mobilization mandate of participative poverty reduction and livelihood enhancement as a strategy for economic development. For the period 2020, the following key programs indicators: register, supervise, and promote the efficient operation of 10 new cooperatives and 20 community micro-enterprises. As I said earlier, repair and retrofit 14 community centers. Conduct promotional activities in the school cooperative thrift program to achieve total savings of $6.5 million. Presently, the school's cooperative program has in excess of $5.2 million. Revive 10 dormant community-based organizations. The reform mandate of the division will see the planned programs of activities for 2020 and beyond fall under the following strategies: community economic business development, community outreach, action, research and planning, community climate change resilience building, human capacity building, organization and strengthening, youth in agriculture. The division has commenced dialogue with the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Community College, Division of Technical and Vocation Education, Department of Agriculture to partner with them in highlighting the importance of agriculture to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And again, to impress on the agriculture students the need to see agribusinesses as a viable economic choice. Plans going forward involve working with the secondary schools that do agriculture in partnership with the Ministries of Education and the Ministry of Agriculture. The goal is to assist the students and the school in making their agricultural projects more meaningful and attractive, thus providing a new vision on how the sector is seen. The division's focus in the past was mainly on students in the primary schools. Having examined the operations' existing structure, the purpose of the 4-H, and being mindful of the target group of the divisions aged 16 to 30, as well as the need for building youth entrepreneurial capacity, the division decided to visit this focus. Although the existing groups on the mainland, the new focus would link both the 4-H and the Youth in Agriculture programs. The theme, Agriculture as a Viable Economic Choice for Sustainable Development, was then adopted. Since then, 2 new groups were established in Overland and Baibu. And I would have visited Overland, and I know that we are working in the one in Baibu yesterday. Or the day before, they planted some seedlings, and these seedlings are from within the same ministry. We do the seedlings at the Liberty Lodge Boys Training Center. So I'm putting out a plug there for them. If you want seedlings to buy, you can go up there and get some seedlings. As was mentioned, there are 2 new groups, and as I said, they're Overland and Baibu, with approximately 15 young people using agriculture as its base. To date, there's been ongoing educational meetings to complement this program. What we do also, we have different persons and different ministries collaborate with us in the Youth in Agriculture program. We have sports. We talk to them about gender. We speak to them about entrepreneurial development, among other things. So they're not just going there as a group to go and plant food and crops. They're trained holistically. The Youth Empowerment Service Program, the YES program, caters for unemployed out-of-school youths between the ages of 16 to 29. This program offers the opportunity for practical work experience, contribution to nation building, and enhancing socio-economic conditions of the individuals. Since the program started in 2001, some 10,000 youths were trained in the Youth Empowerment Service Program. And over that period, we have seen significant progress in the lives of this program. For the young people, many have gone on to university and have gained employment in the private and public sector. And some of them from the Youth Empowerment Service have also become their own entrepreneurs in different areas. The Gender Affairs Division. The Gender Affairs Division, which is the national gender machinery here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, has a mandate to promote policies, programs, and other intervention that enhances gender equality, mutual respect and harmony between men and women in the Vincentian society. It is also strategically placed to ensure that all citizens have equal access to opportunities that will shape their social, cultural, spiritual, educational, economical, and political development. As it relates to legislation, policies, and programs, the Domestic Violence Act, which was passed in Parliament in 2015, has replaced the old Domestic Violence Summary Proceeding Act of 1995 and provides a roadmap of response mechanisms for reports of domestic violence, and also provides avenues for action for victims, such as their rights to protection and support, among others. This very important piece of legislation is one of the 4 pieces of family laws that are harmonized in the OECS region, and is complemented by the Status of Children Act, which was passed in 2011, the Child Care Act, which was passed in 2010, and the pending Child Justice Bill, which is before the final stages of the select committee, and it is my hope that not the upcoming meeting of Parliament, the following meeting of Parliament, that we'll have the second and third reading of the Child Justice Bill and before the end of the year. In 2018, there were 260 reported cases of domestic violence throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines, in which females were the main victims in intimate partner relationship. This figure, however, reflected a 28% reduction in comparison with the data for 2017. While the public is requested to report cases of domestic violence, and especially violence against women and girls, one case of violence is too much. Therefore, the core agencies are tasked with responding in a coordinated manner to ensure the safety and protection of our victims and the prosecution and rehabilitation of perpetrators. The division implements an active and ongoing public awareness campaigns to raise awareness on the issue of gender-based violence. The legislative and supportive structures and programs available for victims as well as perpetrators of violence in the form of weekly radio programs and the use of social media, Facebook, for further outreach. This campaign is further galvanized during the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence that is commemorated between November and December every year. In August of this year, the Ministry of National Mobilization requested technical support from Human Dignity Trust, HDF, towards a comprehensive review of discriminatory laws, with particular focus on sexual offences laws that discriminate against women, girls, vulnerable groups encompassed in the Criminal Code of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to include recommendations for reforms so as to reflect international good practices, including ongoing issues such as rape and sexual assault, including whether the offences are consent-based, gender-neutral, object or office inclusive, and exclude marital rape exemption, sexual offences relating to people with disabilities, and the age of consent laws. This consultancy is expected to be completed by November 2019, and the recommendations shared with stakeholders, including the Cabinet, to decide on the next step. A number of programs are currently implemented by the Gender Affairs Division for full engagement of boys, girls, men and women as strategic allies in achieving gender equality, and they include the re-entry of the teen mothers in secondary schools, the single parents empowerment program, the positive reinforcement program for the rehabilitative of prisoners, men as partners, anti-violence campaign in communities and educational institutions, victims of domestic violence support group, parenting support programs. For the period 2018 to 2019, we have conducted additional surveys and community sensitization consultations on domestic violence legislation, international conventions and agreements in communities of Carrier, Diamond, that's Diamond out here, Diamond Village, Georgetown, Greggs and Langley Park. We have implemented 2 cohorts of Men as Partners program in Arnesville on child abuse, domestic abuse, parenting and men's health. Establish 1 support group for perpetrators of violence, including domestic violence, as a means of positive reinforcement towards rehabilitation. We have provided social empowerment services to 71 single-headed households through on-the-job training, skills training, and soft skills. We have provided access to continue their secondary education to 91 adolescents in the Teen Mothers program. For 2020, the division intends to continue its programming in addition to develop a multi-sectoral standardized manual of procedures as a key response mechanism to reports of gender-based violence, conduct training sessions with key stakeholders on domestic violence legislation, conduct a national teenage pregnancy survey in collaboration with the National Family Planning Program, develop and pilot a Women in Leadership program, develop a gender equality policy and action plan, and support the capacity building of the National Council of Women and other CSOs in the advancement of women and gender equality nationally. Under social protection, the Uniform Assistance Program for this year, the expenses, we have expended some $750,000 on uniform and some books assistance to the needy children of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. In relation to funeral expenses, to date we have spent some $296,000 on funeral assistance. School fees, $31,000. Disaster recovery, which includes fire and any other disasters, $22,000. And the public assistance, what people refer to as a poor relief, to date, $8.9 million have been spent on public assistance. Under child development and child development expenses, this includes the uniform assistance we give to foster care children. We've paid $37,000 for uniform and books and so on to them. School fees, $49,000. Exam fees, $1,430. And the gender affairs, we support the Teen Mothers Back to School program, so we provide uniform assistance to them as well. $8,618 is spent there for uniform assistance and school fees. Once they get to Form 5 and to write the 6 seasons, and they'll spend close to $20,000 in relation to that. During the period of January, under social protection, to the present, the Social Protection Division has engaged in a number of activities for the elderly throughout St. Vincent and the Grenadines. I think I did that already. Misprinted something. One of the things that I think basically that is an update of the ministry's programs of activities which we have had for the year so far. I would preempt any question in relation. Last week or two, I saw on the social media that there was a big upheaval of a 10-year-old child given birth at the Milton Keto Memorial Hospital. I want to make it abundantly clear that from all reports from our Child Development Division and from our social welfare office at the Milton Keto Memorial Hospital and from the hospital administrator, there is no 10-year-old child who gave birth at the Milton Keto Hospital last week. I say that clearly, and I want to also state that the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and the Ministry of National Mobilization, we do not condone any acts of violence, whether it be domestic violence, child abuse, neglect, any kinds of abuse in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This ministry would not condone. And we have had the Break the Silence campaign in 2014. And at that campaign, at that launch, I remember saying at the crowd just down at the flow patio there, the parking area, I remember saying we have an opportunity to speak out against violence in our society, and we must break the silence. If you know that there are acts of violence being perpetrated against the children, the young people, persons with disabilities, the elderly, whoever, and you see it, you have a responsibility to report it. Under the Domestic Violence Act, it states, I think under section 33 or 35, it states that a social worker, a teacher, a medical doctor, a dentist, whoever, if you see that a child is abused in all forms, that you have a responsibility to report it to the Child Development Division, or you can come and report it to me, and we set the standards for the reporting protocols to go in place. But one of the other things that we have to do, we have to continue to speak to families, because at the end of the day, when a child is being abused and a matter goes to court, the family member has to go to court and give the evidence. If they don't go to court and give the evidence, then all what we do would come to naught. But as I just mentioned, we can use the Domestic Violence Act. Once a child is being abused and it is reported and the necessary practical things are in place, the ministry head with the police and the DPP's office can ensure that prosecution takes place. Thank you very much.